Hello, Speedrome Nation. Scott and I here in the Sunbelt Rental Suite here with Jackson Mears. And as we're getting ready to do our first watch-along here at the Speedrome, we have the 25th Annual Jake's 150 coming up here in 2025, and we thought it'd be cool to go back to the original Jake's 150 back in 2001 and do a little watch-along for history purposes or so. And Jackson and I are going to check this out. We're going to start things off here, Jackson. Tori Stiles, who's your current announcer here at the Speedrome, down there with Jake Cohen himself as they get ready to do drivers' introductions.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Logan returning to the Indianapolis Speedrome. He'll be starting at the rear of the field. Good luck, Jim.
Jackson, I know you've just been around here the figure eight racing recently in the past few years, and I know you've really gotten into this figure eight racing, so I'm glad to have you here. And I thought this would be cool to sort of, you see some people that maybe you've heard about before in the past and watch them race here from 25 years ago.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I think just definitely the history of this place. I mean, you've been here for decades and decades, and I'm only on a couple years now, and just seeing the traditions of what taking place, and this being the first annual Jake's 150, and watching Tori and Jake right there. I mean, I'm stoked just to see the racing, see the cars, and just see the traditions that where we carry on today.
Yeah, and this is really cool to see some of these drivers. Some of these guys have raced with us for a long time. Some of them may still be in the 25th annual race coming up here. Some guys making a few appearances here in the race, so pretty cool to see, and it's really nice to see Jake Cohen there, the Speedrome Hall of Famer there. He was around with us for the first 7, 8, 9 races, so it's good to see Jake there. Jake was able to be there on that night for his first race.
I think just through these first couple of seconds, just watching Tori, I mean, Tori being in the booth, and obviously you partnering up with him this year, just a constant pro. And
yeah. And it's different, of course. Kevin O'Neill will be in there calling the race, Speedrome Hall of Famer, which we just passed his birthday up here last Saturday. So it's real cool to have Tori down there doing the driver's intros like he used to do back then. Some of these guys, there's Robert Downey. His son Kyle races with us now in the
front-wheel drives.
In the front-wheel drive division.
I love the whole aspect of the off-the-wall introduction for the fans and just give them that experience. And
well, and at this time, it's something we rarely did during the regular season. It was always something we did during the World Figure 8 Championship 3-hour endurance race. We would do it a few other times during then, but this brought on the tradition of that because at the time, this was the biggest regular season paying race that we'd ever had. This was $5,000 to win in 2001, and this was a time back when the 1-hour figure 8 endurance race only paid $1,500 to win, so such a huge gain there in the prize money for that, and it was just special because it was the first annual event.
I think Tori's interviewing Casey right there, but it's similar to what we watch every Saturday night. All these drivers are heroes and gladiators and so forth, but they're your standard people outside these walls, and just so cool to see what they do in work, but also come out here and put on a show for our fans, and just true badasses.
Yeah, and that's what made this even bigger. Not only the payday for that, but making it bigger with the drivers' introductions. It was a huge field. It was 32 cars that night for this opening night, and made it bigger to the fans as well.
I mean, just looking at the video right now, the front bumpers. That's I know they're just staged right now in the gridded positions, but just the front bumpers and just the appearance of those cars kind of look like some old IROC cars from back in the day.
Yeah, and this was during an era when we were mainly required to have noses on the cars, which we did that for a few years back then. So that made it a neat, different look for the late model Outlaw figure 8 cars back then. And, of course, this being 25 years ago, there are going to be people and stuff where you see some of these folks have passed away, but were an important part of the history, you know, leading with a Jake, of course. And we'll try to point some of those out as we end. And this is a pretty star-studded field. There's Donnie Garrigus II. I know you've seen Donnie Garrigus IV here race, so that just tells you how long that's been going on. There's several Hall of Famers in this starting field, and we'll get to some of those as you can see.
From Indianapolis, Indiana, driver car number 99, welcome back, Jerry Lee Ward.
There's a guy that's passed away, Jerry Lee Ward. He actually, I think it was around this time, won both the Sonny Thompson, Sonny Eaton Memorial Race Awards in the 3-hour, which is something that has only been done once or twice. So, interesting fellow. Actually, the first guy that ever had a message board, which, we, before all this social media stuff, we used to go to wardracing.com and talk about stuff on there. Steve Prine, he's actually deaf.
Really?
He's the only deaf figure 8 driver that I know we had. So, interesting that Steve raced here for such a long time.
They just introduced, or Tori's introducing Manny Aguilar. So, senior fast car driver here at the Speedrome, as well as outlaw figure 8 driver, still
here
racing.
This past weekend, led 27 laps of the figure 8 here 25 years later. Manny doesn't look a day younger today than he does then.
Oldest figure 8 driver currently still racing.
That's right.
And then he was holding off the youngest figure 8 driver currently racing, Johnny Hargraves Jr.
There's the first of our current Hall of Fame drivers in there. That's Charging Charlie Reed out of Whiteland, Indiana.
That is a heck of a nickname.
Yeah. He lives what they used to call on Racers Row. Charlie lived in one house, and on one side of him was C.J. Rayburn, and on the other side of him was legendary NHRA Pro Stock driver Bob Glidden. They all lived next door to each other. So that was a cool deal. That's the original Chris Green. You know the Chris Green that just passed away recently, Chris Green. That's the other Chris Green that raced figure 8 here at the track, who doesn't race here anymore. He's kind of retired from the sport.
Car number 6, Jeff Shackelford, ready to go at it.
There, of course, is the father of our current points leader here at the Speedrome and last year's champion. That's Jeff Shackelford.
So if Jeffrey's the gentleman, what was Jeff?
He was a fun guy. Him and Corey Turner had a little group they called the X Factor, that they used to be the young guns of the track then. There's a guy still racing with us today.
The Bulldog.
Bobby Whitaker. Pretty far up the field, too, actually. And this qualify, I think, started straight up. There's another gentleman that's retired from figure 8 racing, but raced around here for such a long time, Jeff Heiser. Won a lot of figure 8s around here in the 80s.
First started this business many moons ago, but he's been scrapping harder this year than we've seen from him in seasons. He almost took the 3-hour figure 8 endurance race last year, and he's been right there with him all year long. Driving for Sutton Brothers Racing, Red Sutton. The Advantage Auto Stores, Masters Auto Marine from Greenwood, Indiana, George Sutton, car number 17.
George Sutton, a great guy that we unfortunately lost too soon. Been gone here for about a decade or so. Last race he actually ran here was the 2003 3-hour, finished second.
He's got an awesome last name.
Yeah.
Awesome last name.
There's the legend himself, Wayne Arnold. Wayne, all-time winningest figure 8 driver here in the history of the track. Had just came out of retirement here at the end of the 2000 season, so this was his first full season back in probably a dozen years. So
that's the GOAT.
That's him right there. That's Wayne Arnold. It's actually Donnie Garrigus III, who still races from time to time. I'm sure we'll see him 3-hour time come out.
So then DG4 would have been a kid during this, I'm assuming. Potentially.
It'd have been right around the time of his birth, maybe a year or so old. He'd been pretty young then. Now at this time, there's another Speedrome Hall of Famer, Curtis McMurtry, 2-time World Figure 8 champion. During this race, I was actually a crew member on Curtis's car, so this was me being a participant in this race as being the tire guy on the 9 machine at Curtis McMurtry.
So when they're doing this on track and they're doing the introductions, what would you be doing back there in the pits?
I might have been the guy still out on the track with him because they always have one guy stay with the car, and to make sure the driver's buckled in. So I might have been out there. There's a popular fellow right there. I hope for one day for you to meet here in this pit area, a fun guy, Danny Turner.
You could hear it over the PA. Everyone just is absolutely loving it.
Super fun guy.
Awesome hairdo.
Yeah.
Awesome hairdo.
He has been hot. Came in late, missed most of the racing, but by gum, he's been tearing up here lately and climbing the points race. Driver of car number 10, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Kenny Stewart. Soon to be a daddy, no less.
Kenny's retired from racing and stuff, and it's funny. You just heard Tori mention he's getting ready to become a father. He just had a second or third child that just graduated from high school here recently. So that just tells you 20-some years passed by, you know. Here's another guy that was just in our pit office here earlier today. A guy that's already in the Hall of Fame as well. And that's Doug Gregg.
And you just shared with me prior to the Drake Wood race this past weekend that Doug, I didn't know Doug was a legend driver. Heck of a legend driver, and has the most wins here.
Yeah, winningest legend driver. Now here for this next introduction, they're letting Kevin O'Neill do this because he's got a famous saying for this next driver. We'll lay out for this.
There are some people that say that he ought to win every race. There are some people that say that he works to get in everybody else's way. He is the most controversial driver ever in the history of this racetrack. He is hated and loved just as intensely by everybody else, but he doesn't give a damn what you think. You may hate him, you may love him, but you can't ignore making his comeback to the Indianapolis Speedrome in turn number 7 by St. John.
That's like being introduced by like Pat McAfee and Bruce Buffer all at the same time.
Yeah, and Kevin always said, you may love him, you may hate him, but you can't ignore him, Mike St. John. And that saying became so famous that when I got a chance to write Mike's Hall of Fame plaque, that's exactly what it says right on the front of it. He's, of course, the Hall of Famer.
Hoping for the big one tonight. Billy Skiles, the car owner. Skiles Country Auto Parts, the sponsor. Voco Performance helping make it happen. Driver of car number 21, ladies and gentlemen, Bobby Douthat.
And we see his son here racing frequently here during the season, Dylan Douthat. This Bobby won the track championship in 1999, but we're just months away from him winning the biggest prize in figure eight racing at that time, the $25,000 to win World Figure Eight Championship.
And that's the year he doubled up by winning the championship, the season championship.
He won the season championship in 99.
Gotcha.
But 2001, he won the 3-hour. Another driver whose son is with us and prominent in figure eight racing right now, there's Rodney the Rocket Sizemore. His son Chad, of course, we see on a regular basis here.
I bet at that moment he did not think his kid's nickname would be Hung Money.
For a long time, we called Chad Kid Rocket from his dad's. Speaking of a father of sons, we've got somebody coming up right here that you've not seen race before.
In his own car with a lot of help from Bill Tunney Sr. Sponsorship by Mark Howes Remax, J. Greg Allen Builders, security title from Fairland, Indiana. Ladies and gentlemen, a big one for Bill Tunney Jr., car number 5.
One of the most popular people to ever race at this track. Of course, fans regularly nowadays see sons Ben, Jesse, and Austin, who've all won world championships, along with Dad, who unfortunately has passed away, and we miss him every weekend here at the track. Now we're down to the front row here, Jackson.
Ladies and gentlemen, this guy has been one of the fastest guys out here over the last 10 years, and he's ready to go at it for 150 laps. Driver of car number 94, Fred Bear Jr., Hollywood, on the track.
Fred Bear Jr., a driver that's retired from racing, a former world figure eight champion who went on to win in 2008. Always a guy that ended up, when we qualified, on the front row, pole sitter for the 3-hour many times. Speaking of pole sitters, here comes our fast qualifier tonight.
The crew took the car apart piece by piece, put it back together again, because last week he finished second, and the owner said that wasn't good enough. They took it apart. They put it together. He's the fast qualifier. Olmsted Towing, the sponsors. Carmel Sod Farms, All Phase Landscaping, Jim Olmsted, and all those buddies making it happen for Hammerhead. With a time of 18.883 for the qualifying. A great big one, ladies and gentlemen. R.J. Nook Jr.
Pretty popular ovation right there as well.
Still a stud today. Still a stud.
Yeah, and this is his favorite race. He was the first driver to ever win this race 3 times, and this being the inaugural one right here. You heard on RJ's deal, the car owner on that, Jim Olmsted, who is our current legend racer, Max Olmstead II's grandfather.
Wow.
Was the car owner for those 2 cars on the front row.
I think what's going to be cool is we go through this video just to see how many ties are still currently racing today, and just kind of putting that. It's a big tree. It's a big tree of just branches, and like, hey, like this
Well,
is.
and it's just the same when you walk through the pit area today. There's so many 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and maybe even 5th generation folks. It's like that at a lot of short tracks, but you know, it's definitely prominent here at the Speedrome with just the history and the families and stuff. And that's something you notice, whether it be from our lowest level, entry-level divisions all the way up till the top classes.
There's nobody over there saying you have to come out here. Nobody's saying you got to do it. We're ready to go. Waiting for the
Again, great to have Jake Cohen out there for that first one. That he was still along for that. Jake, of course, I mentioned Hall of Famer. He owned his business, Washington Auto Parts on Washington Street. And during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, so many drivers can tell you about how he helped them get started in racing. When they needed something, he had something for them. Always helpful, and he loved the little man and the mid-pack guy, the guys that struggle and busting their butts to race all the time. Always wanted to support those fellas.
I will say this, just watching the screen go by, the car designs. I mean, these things are absolutely beautiful looking cars.
The Jake Cohen 150-lap figure 8.
Yeah, definitely different seeing the. I know that you've seen the cars from recently, seeing the cars with the noses and the front ends. Underneath, still a lot of the same stuff, but definitely a different look.
Everyone can't win, but let's have a good race. A good, safe race. Gentlemen, fire your engine.
Check out that firework right
That
there.
is cool.
The Jake Cohen name across there.
That is cool.
It was definitely a special night having this first ever race for the Jake's 150. Of course, that we've went through the starting lineup and all that, I have to mention this. The very first Jake's 150, we were missing our points leader for that race, the reigning track champion and the current points leader, and that was Bruce Tunney, who's not in this event. Bruce had a little incident the week before with Wayne Arnold and got himself into a little bit of trouble here with the track and current ownership at the time. Gave him a little bit of a one-week vacation, and it just happened to be at the Jake's 150. So tough for Bruce because Jake was a big sponsor of Bruce and early on in his racing career with Washington Auto Parts. So I know it meant a lot for him to have to miss that race. But Bruce ended up winning this race twice. Actually, the last victory of his career was his second Jake's 150 win. So just thought we'd throw that out there before we got going. Now, once again, you get to hear Kevin O'Neill on the PA, which, you know, everybody will tell you it's been around. He was the greatest announcer this track's ever had.
That's what I've heard over past year and a half or so. Just Kevin O'Neill could call the most non-exciting race, but he would make it just a show. And if you were sitting in the stands or so forth, you thought you were, just beautiful behind the mic.
Yeah. And unfortunately, if I remember this race right, I haven't watched it in 20-some years. R.J. Narton, our pole sitter's races get ready to end early here, unfortunately for him. I think his a few laps into this race, he gets into an incident, if I remember this right.
Already lap one facing.
Oh, yeah, traffic. 32 cars, you know, a big field and a fast field. So they're already hitting that intersection traffic, you know. And at this time, we didn't run 75-lap figure eights at all. We had a 1 hour, a 100-lapper, and mostly everything else was 50-lap figure eights. So 150-lap figure eight was, you know, already going to be one of the 2 or 3 longest figure eight races of the season. So big deal having to pace yourself and get going, but yet not fall behind either.
I'll tell you what, I'm glad we're watching. I would love to go back in time and just sit in the stands and just look at this. This is madness.
Yeah. Got one. Oh, big
holy
hit right
cow.
there. That's Jeff Shackelford over there to the left. That was the first car that got turned around, and you see him there on your screen. The second car hit him. Jerry Lee Ward was the car that run into Shackelford there. Maybe I was wrong on the Norton deal. Oh, wait, and something did happen to Norton. I hear Kevin talking about him right now. See Jerry getting out of his car right there. Obviously, everybody okay, but, you know, these larger field events, it's not surprising when you have something happen early on, you know. The guy gets turned around at the intersection. It's almost impossible to get turned around and back going.
I mean, I think we made it 3 laps there, if that, and just the madness has already begun.
Yeah.
Crash that brought out the red flag were Jerry Lee Ward in the red number 99 and Shackelford in the number 6. Also damaged in that intersection accident. The one that took out the leader was the number...
I'd have to look back, but Jeff Shackelford at this time had been running some street stock stuff, and this may have been only his first of maybe a handful of figure 8 starts in the big division. So jumping into the car, I believe Phil Byers owned that car, and it's something that Mike St. John was driving on earlier this season. Actually, in the 3-hour that year, I believe Artie Ware drove that car in the 3-hour.
That thing is, those neck car did not look good.
Yeah. But, you know, again, a lot of that underneath, you know, is not as bad as it looks. A lot of body damage and some suspension damage as we get back to go to green here. With RJ now off the field, we have Bill Tunney Jr. up front now with Fred Bear. This was a race where Bill qualified up towards the front, so he got there pretty quick. But that's something that us guys have been around for a long time. Bill Tunney Jr. was a notoriously bad qualifier and started so many times farther back than he should, but he always got to the front in no time. I don't know how many World Figure 8 Championships we have on video where he would start 15th, 16th, 17th, and would be in the lead during the first hour of the race. He was always a hard charger. Just not always the world's greatest qualifier.
Qualifying's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to...
It's something his sons actually are way better at than he was at. But Bill was the man with no fear for no reason. Charged through that intersection like nobody's business.
I mean, end to end, there's something going on at each corner of the track.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you heard with the qualifying times were in the 18s. You know, this was on a recap tire, not like the racing slicks that we're running here in 2025.
So you mentioned recap. Mm-hmm. Tell to the newer fans, myself, what is a recap?
Yeah, it's something where older race tires were sent off to this place in North Carolina, and they would put a new layer of reconditioned rubber on the top of it. So it was actually just getting a second use out of a racing carcass. And they were great tires. They would last a long time. But unfortunately, the casings became hard to get because they were street car casings. But it got to the point where they weren't putting 15-inch tires on street cars anymore to get the casings. The street cars started moving to the early 2000s to 16, 17, 18-inch wheels. So those casings weren't available to be recapped, which sort of killed that deal like 2003, like 2 years later after this.
I think what's super cool, place is packed. I mean, well lit, everything looks great.
Yeah. And this, Jake Cohen, you know, his family owned the track at the time. They were in their 4th season of owning the track, having bought it off of John Stiles in the winter of 1996. But carried on a lot of the John's traditions as being the 2 main classes. At this time, it was still a 2-class Saturday night with street stocks and these late model cars. Actually, it was 3 classes now. The Roadrunners had just began a couple of years before that. So, as opposed to today where we have, you know, all these classes running here. But we talked about the slower times. The action's still just as great. It's just a different pace that they got going. And as always, we got another crack up here in the corner, and that's Rodney Sizemore getting turned around there in the yellow car, which you'll see Rodney prominently up front later in the race. So he's had some trouble here early on.
I mean, just by watching these first, I think we're on lap 10, but say you did start in the back. there's opportunity to move up. And I mean, if you do run into bad luck, hey, you kind of reset a little bit and charge your way back and forward.
Yeah, and that was something different of this, because still at that time, they still lined the cars up by the ranking system that's been popular around here for a long time. But this being a bigger event, it obviously started heads up from qualifications, which Jake's has been both during the years. These days, we just draw an invert from the fast qualifier. But what's changed between now and then, even though it's a lot faster now because of the different tire, the field is much tighter right now than it was then, from first to 32nd.
They're separated within a couple of tenths from
Yeah.
first all the way to 24th.
Yeah, but still it's the same deal with the long distance racing. You know, the guys anywhere in the field could get great finishes from any starting position, just like now, you know, persevering and doing a great job throughout the race could bring you a great finish, just like it is today.
I mean, we're on lap, I think, 12, and the fact that Kevin O'Neill is making this sound like it's lap 149 and we got one to go. And I mean, this is exciting.
Yeah. And you can see how much traffic they're having to work through. Bill trying to put laps on cars right there. Still got Fred Bear on his tail there in the 94. Kevin pointing out a lot of close calls in the intersection, even if they're not the ones on camera. Because remember back then, these weren't streamed or anything like that. This was an actual VHS recording that a guy that's still doing camera work for us now, Keith Graybill, was doing then. He would record this on his great big video camcorder, and then he would go home on Sunday and literally dub copies of these VHS tapes for you to purchase during the week, and that's how this video came about. So just totally different era. So Kevin's not calling this by watching a monitor and seeing what's going on. He's just doing it visually out the window of the PA booth. And what's something else Kevin was great on, there was no electronic scoring back then. It was hand scoring. But Kevin would constantly be able to read through the top 15 or 16 cars through there, even if they were all on different laps, and tell you where they all were and remember them all the time and be 98% accurate. It was just amazing what Kevin would do there. And a lot of times it seemed like he was not taking a breath. And if you were ever up here by the PA booth, the place would be rocking the whole time because Kevin was constantly rocking back and forth in his chair. He's one of a kind.
I mean, the one thing that I've got this admiration for our guys that race now, and obviously these guys 25 years ago, but just knowing what they have to do with with the feet and obviously their hands, there's so many things that take place for them to not crash and them to make it corner to corner.
Yeah.
The mental focus. I mean, everything. These are true heroes.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's never changed, whether it been the 1960s back in jalopies or what we're watching on the screen right now from 2001 to now 2025. Those skills never changed. The speeds of the vehicles or the quality of vehicles maybe have changed through those decades, but all the skills you needed to survive and get through figure-8 racing has never changed. And I'll always say, you know, these figure-8 drivers are a one-of-a-kind breed. They're different than any other short-track drivers.
Absolutely.
You know, and around this time in 2001, when ESPN started broadcasting the Extreme Games and the X Games, I tried to tell them that this was the original extreme sport right here, back from the 1950s on, figure-8 racing.
I mean, there's a
big X right in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, this is madness, and just the fact that they're doing this for 150 circuits, and I mean, we posted a clip a couple weeks ago during the shootout, and I think it's close to approaching 1 million views, and some of the comments are all across the world like, what is this? Like, this ain't real life. No, it is, and this is what we do every Saturday night.
Yeah, and going back to the streaming and all that stuff, you know, you got to think back to 2001. If you were not here in person, you did not see this stuff. And on those videotapes, it's not like those videotapes were being purchased from people out of state or whatever. They were only being purchased by the people that were here Saturday night. So the guys that paid admission to get in went back and paid admission basically again to buy the videotape to keep as a keepsake. The only time, and there's the old scoreboard. That's something cool.
A working scoreboard.
Yes. And you saw on the top it had the lap.
Yep.
And then it had the car numbers with dashes in between to show you, that was positions. And, you may get 8, 7, 8, 9 cars on that board, And that was something that was also manual, that somebody was typing into an old keyboard onto an old computer there. This is probably back in the old Windows 3.1 days, and we also used to communicate back then from the top of the tower to the back gate by telephone. I know that was a long time ago. The telephone box is still back there at the back gate.
Really?
Yeah, it just no longer, of course, has a telephone in it. But
So that'd be the way you communicate to there to tell them, like, hey.
Radios, of course, but there was, a lot of times radio traffic, you didn't want to get in the middle of it. And the back gate maybe would call to tell them guys were getting ready to come back in the race or something like that. And there's something else. Back when we used to have real tires, what we now call marker tires are not tires anymore. They used to be tires. And Charlie Reed is high-centered on one in the turn over there, where he's got the frame up on top of there and he can't pull off of it. Here's a controversial moment in the race right here. You saw Bill Tunney get spun around there, and he's getting ready to get going. That's going to put Rodney Sizemore into the lead, but the red flags come out now.
Gotcha.
So they're going to have to go back a lap for scoring. So this was a weird point in the race where it was kind of controversial. Rodney didn't pass for the lead. He was trying to get back onto the lead lap. Some people, as lore goes, think that Rodney did get back on the lead lap, and others think he didn't get back on the lead lap. But as you see on the restart lineup, he's not up there with the leader. So according to track scoring, he must have got back on the lead lap at the tail. That's what makes this race controversial, because we'll get to it when we get to the end. There are two people that think they won this race. And the person that didn't win it will still swear to this day they won this race. So we'll get to that when we get to the end. But Bill Tunney Jr. caught a break right there either way by getting spun out at the same time that the red flag had come out for Charlie Reed being stuck on top of the marker.
Definitely will say we're spoiled in today's times with technology and having the loops and being able to use My Race Pass on our phone, and another heroes of this racetrack, timing and scoring.
Yeah, and at this time, I'm sure it was just Christy McGill up there. She's writing down these car numbers as they're crossing the line. As you can see when the leader's coming there, there's just barely a tenth of a second, between these cars as they go across, 15, 18, 20 cars. And you're writing down the numbers as you go. And it's still what they do at Bowman Gray to this day. Bowman Gray Stadium still isn't installed a scoring loop. But it was what was done. That was the thing that was done at all tracks then. But, we didn't know it was any better or any different, because that's just what we knew.
Got a pile up there.
Yeah. It's like Casey White at the back of it there. He's sort of caught up. And there's Bobby Douthit, the big dog there, got into some trouble. Got some steam and a little bit of flames there. You recognize from last year the color scheme. That's what Dylan used on his car here at the Speedrome in 2024. Sort of a throwback to his dad. We talked about Bobby winning the 3-hour later on this year. It was weird. He did not win a figure 8, I don't believe, during this 2021 season. So, and then it came to 3-hour weekend, and then he pulled off the first sweep in 3-hour history. He won the pole, he won his qualifying race, and he won the actual 3-hour endurance race on Saturday night.
Has anyone else ever done that?
It's been done a few times, but it's a rare. Of course, now we don't have the qualifying races anymore, so it's hard to, do that.
Just a rare accomplishment.
Yeah.
Like if you put yourself in that book.
Well, and at the time, this was the 25th annual 3-hour that later on that year, so that had 24 different times nobody had done that. And just another example of 25 years passing by. Him winning the 3-hour that year, and his son Dylan was rookie of the race in the 3-hour last year. So it's another crash. Charlie Reed involved in this one as well. It's not been a good night for a future Hall of Famer.
He has not had a good night, that is for sure.
Got wrapped up there with the 83 of Ed Country Brown. Just a story for you to know. That is Gina Stiles' brother. Ed
Really?
Country Brown, yes. Who raced for a long, long time out here at the Speedrome.
That's a very interesting name.
Yeah, Ed Brown. His nickname was Country. Always went by Country.
You bring up another name, Gina. One of the, just at my time here at the Speedrome, great lady to work. I mean, just
Yeah,
miss her to this day. Miss her here having
yeah,
the track.
Yeah, she's relaxing now in her Speedrome retirement. But,
Absolutely.
spent many years out here, made this a much better place.
100%.
She's also in the Speedrome Hall of Fame, and well deserved. Fred Bear there out in front now, looks like. Wayne Arnold up there in the 12 car. That's Steve Prine, the guy I was telling you about during driver's introduction, the deaf driver. He won many a feature out here in street stocks, and he won oval features here in the late model division. So it was always an interesting time when it got to be winner's interview time when Steve got there down to the front stretch. But he was a popular guy, a lot of people happy. He had a lot of hand signals and stuff. And famously, Steve Prine got married at the start-finish line 3-hour weekend one year.
That is great.
Yeah, and then raced in the 3-hour.
So this Jake's 150 takes place, and then I'm assuming we would race Friday, Saturday leading into this?
Oh, yeah. This, these days we take a lot of weekends off around these big events, to get guys prepared. We did not do that at all back in these days. I wouldn't be surprised. They raced every weekend. There was no weekends off. And they would throw in Friday nights, every 3 weeks. So they may have raced a Friday night, then the very next Friday after this. So
we were going over a couple days ago just what one of the schedules one year looked like, traveling and going track to track to track to track. And it's like, I mean, heck, if we could do that, we would. It'd be like no different than Indiana Midget Week or Indiana Sprint Week and some of these big dirt races that take place. And
unfortunately, some of the tracks that ran these type of cars have faded away from running those, where we've always been the center of the figure eight universe, but there was a lot more bigger planets around our solar system then. As of now, there's not as many. We're still the center of it and keeping figure eight racing alive here at the Speedrome.
Absolutely. So like on a night like tonight, how many alternates do you think there would be?
We started everybody in this.
Okay.
Yeah. The alternate thing has been a 3-hour thing.
Gotcha.
It used to be a 1-hour thing. The 1 hour, they used to let these street stocks run in it as well, so the 1 hour had alternates for many, many years as well. We actually used alternates in the spring shootout about 4 years ago. So it's something that hasn't been used during the regular season much. 32's kind of on the cusp these days, and that's what we had in the Jake's 150 field in 2024. So, which makes it really crazy. But then again, we have a bigger night of racing. This night might have had these 32 outlaw cars here, but you probably had 40 street stocks, and you probably had 40-some Roadrunner cars as well. So it's still a very full night of racing, but this would have been the only event that night for the late model outlaw figure eight.
What gets me is when they go side by side coming off the corner to the crossover, but there's a car coming at them at the crossover. It's like just the level of focus and just skill set.
And that's the thing, that drivers talk about, that one of the big topics here in 2025 is having the wings with the fully covered graphics. You see, this was before we allowed them to run the wings during the regular season. So there's much more vision for guys to see those other cars when they're stacked up side by side. And, these days with the wings, and if you got too much stuff on there, you can easily see how somebody catches a blind spot. And when you're side by side like that, next thing you know, you're up here against the front stretch wall waiting on the wrecker to come out.
And it's already too late.
Yeah. So that's another difference from today's cars and those cars visually. And something else that the smaller, slower tire brought on is you didn't have a lot of the super monster motors either, because a monster motor would overpower these less grippier tires. as opposed to now with the grippier tires. There's a lot more bigger engines during the regular season as there would be during this era here in 2001.
And obviously, like during 2001 and so forth, cost everything is much different than it was today.
Yeah, and it was the same. We're not just comparing racing on that. You going down to McDonald's or your paycheck, your house payment, all that good stuff. So it's not fair to say, that the racing,
But I think
this is why, racing's not good now or whatever the cost-wise.
But I think what's cool in that statement though, with the cost perspective, hey, a lot more things were affordable for everybody to where, hey, everyone kind of had a very, not a similar car, but it was more within the reach of a lot more people to where, hey, the driver was able to make a difference on this.
And of course, these drivers, the same thing about the drivers is these are still 9-to-5 guys that worked every week at their regular job, took care of their families, spent evenings in the garage with their friends working on these cars and busted their butts to get out here and race each and every weekend and put every bit of ounce of effort and quality and workmanship into their cars as they do now, just like any other time in the race.
That's the coolest part. So, I mean, anybody watching this video today, if you ever get the chance to make it in the pit area, go connect with these drivers, go connect with these crews. They're no different than anybody sitting here in the pits, but when they do get off work, they go to their shops, they go to their houses, they go to their car owners, and they work and work and work until, some go early hours of the morning. And, they do it to put on a show here at the Speedrome.
Yeah, and that's the thing they like to do. Number one is most important. It's the passion of them wanting racing as their hobby, their sport. But it's also to compete in front of fans and have the fans love it. And most of the guys like the admiration of it. Some guys like the booze, like Mike St. John that got in there. He loved the booze. He loved playing the villain, but that's all part of it. It's still part of being part of the racing, And that passion's never changed, whether it be a junior fast kart or an outlaw figure 8 driver. And the guys that never have raced, they've just worked on cars for 30 or 40 years out here. Their passion's just the same, just because they're not behind the wheel.
There's a lot of unsung heroes that have never gotten behind the wheel, but are so important to the history and the current history to where we're at today. Oh, shoot, we got a wreck on track.
Yeah, and that's Wayne Arnold there in the intersection. They got tangled up. Bill Tunney got caught up with a little bit. I think Bill was got collected in it. He's going to pull away there. Looks like Wayne Arnold and Keith Ritchie there. Wayne in the 12. Wayne trying to pull away.
That is a good-looking 12 car.
Yeah. Yep, he pulls away after the wreck. You can see the damage, but it looks like the back end of the car is sort of lower than normal. And I'm sure he's going to head to the crew and have them check it out.
Sounded like Kevin said he had a flat right rear or axle damage or 56 laps in.
Yep. And I tell you what, that scoreboard, we used to, after the races were over Saturday, it would scroll, left to right, and we would put the upcoming events for next weekend on there, and you could see it from Brookville Road during the week to be able to see what was going on during the weekend. You can hear the excitement on Kevin's voice. No matter whether it was something minor or not, it always sounded like something big.
He takes it to that next level.
Yeah.
I'm very shocked by that. He just said it's only the 5th leader of that race. I would have thought there would have been 15, 20.
It's been pretty crazy. But this I'm sure of, would be the last race probably ever in Speedrome history that now that Mike St. John's taken the lead, that Mike St. John and Wayne Arnold led the race. And those are two guys that finished 1-2 in races in the 80s, probably hundreds of times. Those are two of the winningest figure 8 drivers in the history of this racetrack. And at the time, Wayne Arnold, of course, just came back to run this one final season of racing after being retired for almost 10 years. And Mike St. John was just running sporadically here and there. So for somebody like myself who's into this old school stuff, it's very cool to see these guys back on screen again. And a lot of you younger folks watching it hope
And this
you
is what you
appreciate that.
this is what you lived through. This is what
Yeah.
this is what sparked your passion
Yeah,
for this.
and it's something that you younger folks watching now, 20 years from now, are going to be thinking about when you're watching old races of Jeffrey Shackelford and Mark Tunney and Chad Sizemore and people like that, because those were the heroes, the legends that you were watching racing at this current time. So, and again, now that Mike's in lead, we'll go back to that controversial moment where we talked about, was Rodney Sizemore a lap down or not? Was Mike St. John a lap down or not during that time? And yeah, and there's the rundown. Mike St. John, George Sutton, Rodney Sizemore. So now Rodney's coming back into play.
I think the one thing cool just by watching this, I mean, experience in my first year last year when you guys would race under yellow, I'm like, what is going on? But just watching this,
Yeah.
instantly get back going, and
Yeah.
I mean, just quick
And
to
that's
it.
something that always freaks people out the first time they come here. And it's something we've been doing since the late 70s. So it's normal to us. So when we go to some other tracks to watch races and we feel like they're under caution for, like, it seems like an hour, where it might not be an hour. It just feels like it to us who've constantly watched this. And that was across all divisions. We only, the legend cars have been one that many years they slow down during yellow, but most other divisions, until we got to the junior fast cars, when that became a red or green situation. But it's just a speedrome thing, and it's something we're used to, just like you would be if you were a dirt track racer and you're used to the way that the dirt tracks run their events.
I think other thing too, we mentioned it a little bit ago about it being the marker tire being a street tire. You look outside the track today, we got these big, Caterpillar-like tires that go on a backhoe and so forth. The vision to be able to see that tire compared to how they are now, you can instantly see that. You know where you're pointing to.
Yeah.
But with that street tire, you may not be able to.
And what was weird is there was a metal ring that was bolted down, that was made into the concrete, and the tire would sort of encompass around the metal ring and be bolted to it. So there'd be times during the evening, maybe one of those became dislodged, and we had to bring a backup tire out and mount it down. And these day and age, we have the concrete markers that are replacing them. The tires are more now because the suspension has become so creative on these outlaw cars that these guys were able to just drive over them like they were nothing. So now we put the big tractor tires out there to keep them from shortening the course up even more with the fancier shocks and suspension that they have now. Now we've got Rodney back up in the second spot. There's Bill Tunney Jr. goes for another loop. He kind of bumps over the tire and stalls out. That's going to cost him another lap. But Bill was the leader at that time when we were talking about the possibility of Rodney being a lap down. They obviously gave Rodney his lap back, and that's where some people disagree or don't disagree whether he got his lap back, but there's nothing we could do about that. But anyways, he's coming up now to challenge Mike St. John for the lead. Mike in the red 7 car, then you've got Bill Tunney, and then there's that all-yellow machine of Rodney Sizemore coming up. We got to be closing in on halfway or so.
Yep. You definitely can't miss the Sizemore machine.
No, and you'll notice the door. Back when Kenny's Auto Sales was around, which Kenny Auto Sales was Kenny Sizemore, which was Rodney's father, who's also a Speedrome Hall of Famer. He liked when his logo was real big on the side. You could see it say Kenny's Auto Sales encompassing the whole door of Rodney's car. And that's the way he liked it, because Kenny liked his name big and bold on everybody's car.
Going 3 wide there with Bill, I mean, how we see it today, too, people going 3 wide after a marker tire, it's like, this is absolutely insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a straight fight between these two right now. Rodney at this time had already won his track championship back in 1994, and Mike St. John at this point was a 3-time track champion and a 3-time world figure 8 champion. But again, a part-time racer where Rodney was a full-time racer at this time. So it was real impressive on what Mike was doing after only racing once or twice this year. And actually that's Wayne's backup car that he's driving. And Mike had won an Outlaw figure 8 a few weeks before this actually at the Anderson Speedway. But for him to jump in this ride basically with not running but once or twice and race against Rodney, who at the time was the world figure 8 runner-up.
It's about to get good.
One of the best in the business. But it's, again, just like in racing today in figure 8 racing, that traffic is something that could play a role and probably will here in the battle for the lead.
And that's what I think what makes the Speedrome so unique, just with, how you get the traffic and you obviously have the crossover action and so forth, but, just your lap traffic management, you have to, how you set one up to where, hey, do you go over under here?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, and for those of you watching this on our YouTube channel, this track is only 1/5 of a mile. So that's a very, very small bull ring. These cars racing in that small area. This isn't a big half-mile track where it's all spread out. So it's constantly intersection traffic and hand-to-hand combat traffic with lap cars around you. You see Rodney laying the bumper on a little bit there to Mike. They're dealing with those lap cars, and also Bill Tunney trying to get one of his laps back there as well. So it's a full race all the way around your vehicle.
It's almost like multiple races in one.
Yeah, and where a normal oval race, you're just watching that guy on your hip or trying to pass you on the outside. You're having to do all this and not get yourself splattered at the intersection at the same time. Putting a lap here on Whitaker. Bulldog had a good run here going this year.
I think what's cool watching this, obviously legends up there in the front, but just watching how they're doing it clean, how they're doing it the right way, not, hey, not going to spin and win or do something like that, just really good racing.
Yeah, and they understand there's going to be some paint traded. There's going to be some contact. It's short track racing. That's just going to happen.
Correct.
And as like today and any other time, most racers will tell you they want to be raced how you race them. And that's usually the way it goes. If somebody's been out of the norm with you, you may treat them a little differently. But the majority of racers have the respect of each other because they race with each other each week, and the tables are most likely going to be turned on another night where the other guy has the advantage.
And that's going to be the coolest thing for people like myself and younger generations watching this. Like, hey, this is how they did it back. You can say back in the day, but it really is back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's like they put on excellent racing. Hey, a little bumper here and there, that's fine. But it's not driving through someone. It's not just putting on damn good racing.
Yes. And that's what brought the fans in. And that's what we're famous for. I don't know if this track, that was built in 1941 would have been around here all these years without two things. And that was open wheel racing in the early days. And then when the figure 8 racing developed, that's what made this track famous. And in this era of tracks going away, people selling tracks, turning them into things, that's what's kept us important here, because you see a battle for the lead.
Yep, they're door to door. And I think that's another interesting point with figure 8 racing, definitely with these outlaw figure 8 drivers. Hey, you clear the lap traffic, then you go racing hard again. You're kind of just that lap traffic management, like we said. But then once you clear it, it's balls to the wall. You have to go.
Yeah, and at its simplest form, when you're side by side with somebody, you're not just going to be on the inside like on an oval race the whole time. If you're on the inside on one end of the track, you're going to be on the outside on the other end of the track. So if you ran a guy high down there when you were side by side, guess what? He could give it right back to you going back the other direction. So that's what the unique forms of figure 8 racing and intricate things. As Rodney Sizemore now has the lead there with Mike trying to get it back. But still a lot of traffic ahead of him. And these are guys that they're trying to put a lap down that you've seen qualify in the top 10. So they're not no slouches. They're trying to put a lap on here.
So when you referenced you were a pit crew member at this time, a race like this is happening. I'm assuming you're watching from the fence. Where are you watching?
Yeah, because these longer races, they would leave the gates open, so your car could come off at any time. So you had to have in your pit area a couple of tires ready, aired up, one with the front tire pressure, one with the rear tire pressure, just in case you had a flat. Because on a normal race night, the pit gates are closed. So if you had a flat tire or something, you just pulled on the backstretch, your race was over. But say the guy come off turn 2, your driver did, and he had a flat tire, he may go screaming into the pit. So you had to be ready to run back to your pit area and be ready to make the change to get him back out as soon as you can.
Better hope you had your running shoes on that night.
Yeah, so your nerves were up, the whole time. And with so many cars on the track, if you lost focus of your guy for a second, maybe there was a good battle going on, and you looked over, you always panicked for a second before did I miss my guy? Did he come in? Is he back here in the pits waiting for me? And then you found him and took a deep breath and went, okay, I'm good. And then went another lap around. So probably wasn't as stressful as the guy driving the car, but it was a little stressful in the pit area too. Kevin, I just heard him mention the points, and I talked about earlier, Bruce Tunney, the points leader, being out. Rodney was the guy that was second in points at this time. So this was a big night for him to gain a lot of points with the points leader sitting out. So him running up in first place now is where he needs to be and trying to get back to the points lead in the season-long deal. They're all about halfway through the season, but still important stuff.
So like a season back then, how many races were a season championship?
2001, I would have probably guessed 24 to 28 races would have been the regular season point season, and that's every race counted. But what was interesting in this era, though, it wasn't a NASCAR-style point system like we got now. It basically paid out $1 per point, except for this race, because this race had such a high payout that they couldn't do that. But let's say on a normal night, let's take the 1 hour, for example, that year. It paid 1,500 points to win, which was $1,500, 1,500 points. So second place then in the 1 hour was $750 and 750 points. So you could see you can gain a lot of points on nights on wins. The most famous incident of that was Dwayne Lee in 1990. He was 5th place in points going into the final weekend of racing. They had a 50-lap figure 8 on Saturday and a 1 hour figure 8 on Sunday. He won both of them to move from 5th and win the championship.
Wow.
By winning the last 2 nights, which made it so super dramatic. But at the same time, you had 25 to 30 guys who were on perfect attendance. So it made a bigger deal, where these day and age, you may only have 6, 7, 8 guys running perfect attendance. So you could win some races these days if we use this system and coast the rest of the year. So just different eras, just like we talk with pricing and things like that. Hopefully I'm not shaking too much on this camera because my knee's bouncing because I'm getting excited. Even though this race happened 25 years ago, it's still,
But it's still just
gets to me.
it's still just cool. And I mean, I think what I'm appreciating is the fact of what I'm accustomed to of watching week in, week out, to what you have been accustomed to throughout generation. It's the same product. It's just different times, different cars, different. And the fact they are going slower here, like about 2 seconds slower than what we run now, but it's still great racing.
But something else mentioning the slower, and it's nothing against any coverage from back then or even now our great coverage from Speedrome.tv. This racing is so much more exciting in person than it is over the TV because it can't justify the speed. Just the same as when you go to the Indy 500 or the Daytona 500, you can't really appreciate the speed unless you're there in person. But it still shows the excitement of it. But something else that I thought was cool by having you on here with me on this first watch along that we're doing was that you've just seen the last couple of years of this. So appreciate the era of seeing names that we've talked about. But also now that when we come to our next figure 8 race here, you've now seen some of these guys that you're watching on Saturday nights, fathers race, or maybe their uncle or whatever in their family. So that's another thing for you to now appreciate when you watch the Chad Sizemores or the Dylan Douthits or the Ben Tunney or the Mark Tunney. Their dads, race in this era.
And where they got their craft, where they learned, was from their parents or their uncle or such.
And it's just a love that they had from the time they were small children, going to help their fathers in the garage work on the car. And some of the guys that were watching the 2001 race here on screen, they did that as well, because a lot of these guys, their fathers raced at the Speedrome before that. So they grew up in the garage, in the 60s and 70s and 80s of these guys. So it's just a tradition that's passed along.
I think what's kind of cool right now, we're just past lap 104, but cars we're starting to lose some cars a little bit,
Sure.
but the action is still top notch. It's still super thrilling.
Because like in any of these races, you're going to have attrition, but you still got guys that are battling for things. They might not be battling for the lead, but some of them may have never had a top 10 finish before in their career. Some of them may have never had a top 10 finish in a big event in their career. So, you got a lot of battles going on of guys trying to accomplish goals, so it's still impressive in any race that you go to all the way down to the end. And two, you never know. How many times have you been to a race where something's happened to the leader late in the event,
I think one of the coolest stories I've ever heard you tell me was when Mike Riddle won the shootout, and he was down
down a cylinder,
and just
he lost the lap. Everybody counted him out. But what it did by him losing that cylinder, it let him back his pace off and save his tires some. And then when everybody else burned his tires up late in the race, he made up the lap under green and passed the guys back to take the win. So you just never know what could happen in these events. Good to see my guy Curtis McMurtry in 5th there on the leaderboard, so I'm sure I'd have been excited right then and there. We weren't contending for too many figure 8 races during this season, so for us to be in the top 5, as I was just telling you, we're racing for things. This might at the time been one of our best finishes of the season, so we'd have still been pretty excited, even though we weren't battling for the actual win. Rodney's now got him a good lead going here over Mike St. John, so he's still trying to work through traffic. Still trying to keep his nose clean. As you see when he was passing that lap car, he wasn't real close to it because he doesn't want to risk cutting a tire down or anything. And plus at this time, I'm sure in his head he's thinking about saving a little tires, because you never know, if you have a red flag, you might have to go head-to-head with Mike on a restart. You never know if these races go green all the way to the finish. And there's Charlie Reed getting put a lap down. You see him sort of backing off the gas, letting the leader by, being respectful, as we talked about earlier. Charlie knows his race for the win is over with, but still wants to get a good finish and let the leader go, because he knows later on in the season he'll be leading a race, and want Rodney to do the same for him.
I think one of the coolest things that I've learned over the past couple races watching this year and even last year is when you talk to some of our drivers, whether that be Ben Tunney or Jeffrey Shackelford or Chad Sizemore, and they reference certain guys through the field to where, hey, like, you just know your marks. When you're coming through the middle of the corner, hey, this is where I can shoot that gap or I can't. And it's like, just watching on here, you can see the blurb of the throttle or the hesitant. Like, it's just like, hey, like, you just that give and take. And it's stuff that carries on still today.
Yeah, and it's something I always talk about. I call it the mental Rolodex. And I think these drivers, as they race with a figure 8, because it is dangerous at the intersection, you build a mental Rolodex of each driver that you're racing with to try to learn their tendencies, to whether they're going to shoot the crossover, they're going to drive in over their head maybe in a corner, things like that, because that's how you survive, is trying to predict what they're doing. There is no rules of order in the intersection to say this guy should go ahead of this guy or not. It's all done on instinct at 60 or 70 miles an hour with 2,500-pound cars, at this time, so you had to be very careful.
I think the other thing, too, I think we're getting ready to hit 35, 36 to go. just obviously you have the car, the attrition with that, tires are losing it, cars probably getting tight. But then you also have the physical and mental fatigue.
Yeah.
And it's like one little split second to where you're just not on it. It could cost you.
Yeah, a flat tire loses you everything. Getting spun out could lose you everything. And getting spun out may be just a matter of inches of you misjudging lapping a car or something. And as we talked earlier, this season was mostly filled with 50-lap figure eights. And at this time, the 100-lapper and the 1 hour are yet to come during this season. So at this point, they'd run 50 laps or less most every night. So this is a longer distance mentally. Also that longer distance, as you mentioned, physically on the tires, on the machine. So, yeah, all that's factoring in. You see Rodney passing George Sutton, who last time we saw the leaderboard was the third-place car. So that tells you how the pace that Rodney's putting on, that he and Mike St. John are probably the only ones now in the lead lap. And as again, the $5,000 to win was massive these days. These days, we talked about the 3 hour that year was going to be $25,000 to win because it was the 25th anniversary. But up until that point, the 3 hour had only paid $10,000 to win. So this $5,000 regular season race for 150 laps, where it was going to take you, 400 laps or so to win $10,000. So this was a huge deal to win $5,000 for this race in 2001 money. Back there in 2001, they weren't handing out $15 an hour jobs at McDonald's like they are now. Those were $3 an hour jobs.
Absolutely not.
So $5,000 was a lot of cash.
That would probably pay your mortgage for the entire year.
Yes. But even though you talked about the car count going down, as attrition through any of these long races, look at this battle here with like 10, 12 cars.
It's insane.
And Rodney's having to split this battle. These guys aren't just letting them through because they're battling for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever.
Rodney just can't take it easy because then he has second place right on him.
Yeah, so he's got to force the issue, but these guys also are trying to respectably let him through, but also keep the pace with their race. See Rodney sneaking through there once again. Oh, there's some contact there. We talked about anything could happen.
That could have easily gotten Rodney. Easily.
That could have been your leader, and he gets spun around. Kevin talking about Richie fixing his door there from inside so he could see, so he could pull back on the track. Kevin was pretty excited about that.
That is thrilling.
Yeah. That just tells you about guys battling for positions and things. He wants to get back into the race. He doesn't look like he's going to make it back out there, but he wanted to. And that's first and second place almost meeting in the crossover. Kevin used to always have a famous saying that if you were exactly 1/2 lap down, that means you had hit in the crossover. So you always had to be careful even when you're racing like that, because some people would think, well, why wouldn't the second place guy just take the leader out so he can win the race? Well, guess what? You're going to trash your car as well. So the third place guy is going to win.
And the third place guy is just chomping at the bit.
Yeah. And famously, there was a race in the early 80s here where Kenny St. John and Kenny St. John and Wayne Arnold were first and second place and hit each other in the crossover on the last lap of a 50-lapper, and third place won. And it was a deal where they were both trying to be courteous to each other at the crossover and let the other one go, and they ended up wrecking into each other. So that'll tell you that two of the best could even end up in the intersection in a wreck. It's just the kind of sport it is. But you've seen when Rodney was racing second place Mike St. John at the crossover, he just wasn't laying over because he knew he had to keep going. Because you never know if you might have to race him before this deal's over with.
Yeah, this being the first race I've ever watched a Rodney full attack. I mean, just
Yeah.
start to where we're at now. I mean, just full press court. Super.
Rodney was a great figure eight driver. He's in the conversation that we have every once in a while of the best drivers to never have won the 3-hour figure eight, which of course is the crown jewel of all figure eight racing. Rodney finished second, I believe, 3 times in the World Figure Eight Championship. So he just so close, and it's the one crown jewel he missed. But this is something you can never take away from him, being the winner of the inaugural Jake's 150, which is now getting ready to go on its 25th year. So that'll never change. Rodney's done a lot of special things here at the Speedrome, won a lot of big events. Of course, the track champion in 1994. But yeah, very good racer, very good qualifier. That was your third place guy. We talked about anything could happen late. Fred Bear getting turned around. George Sutton there passing him. That may be for position right there.
And that's why if your car is still running, just keep it, because you never know what could happen.
Perseverance, for sure. For sure.
It's like you watch in other different forms of motorsports. Once you lose a lap, yeah, I'm done. I'm calling it. With this, you keep going to that checker flag. You just don't know where you're going to finish.
Especially in the longer distance races, because it's just so out of the not norm. You know, if we raced 150 lap figure eights every weekend, it would be a different story. Just a couple handful of laps here left for Rodney Sizemore. And we could talk about a little bit about, you know, now that Mike and him are solidified there, those spots. You know, that controversial deal of the lap down situation. I could go either way on my opinion on that. My memory's probably as hazy. I probably had a better opinion years ago on that. But, Mike, if you're watching, I'm sure you still think you won this race. Whether you did or not, I can't tell you. But officially, Rodney Sizemore will end up being the winner. But still an amazing run out of both you legendary figure eight drivers out here.
You hear that line from Kevin? Don't try that, son. I'm still the man.
It looks like Sutton now is in third, so that spin from Bear cost him third place there in the late stages. And those two guys are close to each other and probably going to battle it out. Rodney in a lot of traffic there. Still risking it there, going to the inside of some of those cars.
That'd be so stressful, knowing you're coming to, oh, shoot. But knowing you're coming to just a handful of laps to go, and you're about to get that payday.
Yeah.
And just like.
Well, and you always famously hear in all forms of motorsports, drivers talking about hearing noises and things in their cars late in the races, you know, because your mind is wandering to the success that you could be on the doorstep of having. So that's something that goes in all forms of motorsports. But here, you know, a lapse in judgment could end up getting you hit in the intersection. You know, and that's something different you see in any era of figure eight racing. When you see guys in this spot for the first time in your career, when they're having a chance to win their first race, those nerves get in. I'm sure Rodney's nerves are getting in as well, but at this time he's won a bunch of figure eight races, but still you have those nerves. But it's just so much different when it's a guy going for his first time, you know, win. So, but this is a big event, you know, a big payday. I'm sure the nerves were up on Rodney as well. He's only about a turn and a half from lapping second place Mike St. John, but you heard Kevin say there's like 4 laps left to go. And even though we don't have the pylon like we have now, that scoreboard's way up there, these guys could look at that scoreboard, and they read it a lot.
If you're a driver and the track displays just a scroll or something, you are going to find it.
Yeah.
You are going to find it.
And even though this is a crazy form of racing, figure eight racing, it's amazing what these veteran guys know where the other cars are on the track. He knows where Mike St. John's at, and he can sense on where what his situation is to bring it home to victory.
What I've always found fascinating in motorsports is, hey, they look like they're going so fast, but when they're behind them, they can slow things so way down.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I got it. We're good.
That's what amazes me when we first start having these GoPro in-car cameras. The first one I think I ever saw was Mark Tunney's, And I always thought it looked like, my gosh, he looks like he's just driving on the interstate at 40 miles an hour. Anybody could do this. Obviously, they can't. Anybody could do it, but just they make it look so easy.
White flag lap, here we are.
Rodney's seen back off there from sticking his nose in between those two lap cars. He knew it was a white flag lap.
Good for the fans. Got a hell of a show.
Yeah. A lot of action. Here comes St. John around for his second place finish. Great run here. One of the first races he ran at the Speedrome that season. A 15-second lead is impressive. See these last cars, and we're going to have the Victory Lane celebration here on the tape as well, which there's a lot of folks that's going to be in Rodney's Victory Lane here who have passed on, special to him, you know, so it's going to be cool to see some of these folks here down in Rodney's Victory Lane. We may even get a glimpse of a young Chad Sizemore here in the winner's circle as well, as you see Rodney celebrating for his fans with some burnouts.
That's what I think the coolest thing still every Saturday night, just once they're done racing, that checkered flag waves, just the appreciation the fans give to that driver. Like, hey, like, great. Like, it's something that you had to be here to feel it.
And the fans could see when the driver takes that victory lap with their helmet off, the smile on their face. Even though it's a driver that may have won 30 or 40 of these races, they're still just as happy as it's their first one, because we talked about earlier how much they've worked all week long to get to this point. So just important to them to win. You hear Kevin talking. We still have 2 Roadrunner features left to run after this. We're not going to be watching those, folks, by the way. Handing the checkered flag, flagging that race, Earl Bryant, a man you've met in the pit area here recently.
Correct.
Who was in the pit area all the time. He was our flagman for a few years here at the track. Still around with us. Daughter raced in the junior fast carts here in the recent years. See Rodney slow and steady there, making sure all his fans get a chance to see him.
We came into this evening with all kinds of stories to tell. The guys overcoming.
And let's listen to Tori as he talks Rodney down towards Victory Lane.
And making it out here. Guys tearing the car apart, making it out here. And Rodney Sizemore brings it home. This will launch him about 40 points out of first place in the late models. Here comes the check. Cruz already claimed the money. Biggest win for the Sizemore family. We'll just pop this one right where it belongs. Give one up, Rodney Sizemore, ladies and gentlemen, brings it home. We're past curfew, try to squeeze in. Rodney, we're going to break a few rules and cut in here. Congratulations, you made it home.
All right. Oh, man. I tell you what, I got to especially thank my crew. We had a small problem from the get-go. We got back there, we changed it. My boy Danny there, and Brad and the rest of them here had me going. And, God, man, I'm lightheaded from this. Little Kenny here. Larry. We got everybody's here. Brad.
And Kenny's Auto Sales.
Yeah.
Raceway Auto Sales.
Raceway Auto Sales. I got to thank all of them. Sundance and them jumping in there. Mom and Dad, Raceway Auto Sales, and Emery Motors. Fred's built me a good motor here. Yeah, boys, I think that's about it. Did you enjoy it? And my little sister here. Okay, so did you have fun out there? Oh yeah, man, it was really rough for the first 50. I thought we was actually done, and we finally got a lap back here, and went out for another red. Went right in, made a change, and man, that helped the car tremendously. I got to mainly thank my crew here. They really jumped in there, and it was hot, but they got it done for us.
Well, now the other big story is this launched you about 40 points out of first place. Were you aware of that?
No, I sure didn't.
We were up doing some math, so you're in the hunt. We're going to get you a picture time and wrap things up. Congratulations, one and all. Folks, we're going to have to shut the PA back off again. We apologize to folks in the neighborhood. We do appreciate you. It's going to be James Victory on the signboard and the 3 Roadrunner races to wrap up the night. And we'll take one last trip upstairs to Kevin O'Neill to close this one down. Kevin?
Again, we still do have some Roadrunner races left to be run here. That particular form of motorized madness will light up the night sky.
A fun time for us here this evening watching this race. We look to try to do this some more with some different folks joining us watching these races. Maybe have some drivers, maybe you have some different other fans join us, but some cool historical stuff, and glad to have you here, Jackson, with me. And
Gets me pumped for this weekend. Gets me pumped to watch the 25th annual Jakes 150.
Yeah, exciting stuff coming up. Not just the 25th annual Jakes, but tons of great figure 8 racing always here at the Speedrome. And thank you, folks, for watching us here today on our video here on our YouTube channel. Stay tuned to our YouTube channel for more things like this and other great programming. But when you're on our YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe. That's very important. Like and subscribe, so that way you get notifications when we have new videos posted for you. And thanks for always supporting the Indianapolis Speedrome, whether you're at the track or whether you're watching on Speedrome TV, and being a part of Speedrome Nation. And thanks for being with us on this look back to the first ever Jakes 150 in 2001.